You are listening to American WAG, where the mind is respected and the truth is sometimes detected. Time keeps on slipping into the future. My friend Darrell is dead. He died about 6 weeks ago. Went to his funeral yesterday. I was prepared for it. The services were held in Compton, about 15 minutes away. Little church on a little street within view of the jail and the courthouse. Philadelphia Baptist Church. The minister wore black. He had gold rings, large frame glasses, and a purple handkerchief, pocket square. His daughter was in the back working the Spotify. The church had about 6 pews on each side, angled with red upholstery. There were no Bibles or hymnals, and there was no guy sitting in the back. When I got there were half a dozen people milling in the parking lot. Guy next door was working on his motorcycle in the front yard. Music was blaring. It's one of those dirty streets. All the houses had burglar bars. Cars in various states of disrepair. Some you can tell haven't been driven. And it's kind of a dead-end street. I got inside the chain link fence for the parking lot. I didn't recognize anybody. But everybody's wearing masks. There were 3 women there, chunky. And as I got in, I noticed they gave me a program. I went to sit on the far end by myself, near the back. Before I put on my mask, one of the ushers came by, preparing to give me one. I was there on time, 2 o'clock. Nothing started until 2:30. About 2:20, all the people came in, and I started to see people that I recognized. I recognized his sister, the girl next door. Time has not been kind. But I knew that about her. The family had gone through tough times. Their dad, Mr. Maurice, was a truck driver. He had a moving van for a company called Rosa's. They're all from Texas. And there are 8 kids. They had a yellow Chevrolet Biscayne station wagon, 57. Same style as a Bel Air, but it was a station wagon. They always had a station wagon. The 2 older boys were mechanics, and my friend was the second oldest boy, and he was always talking about cars. They had nice lowriders at the time. Back before I moved out of the neighborhood in 1980, 1981. body wasn't there, so it was just a wake, I guess. And we went through fairly ordinary service. Psalm 23, John 14. Minister, which I suppose he must be, he was in love with the sound of his own voice. Got carried away, mispronounced the deceased's name, but on the whole was good. There wasn't a lot of loud boo-hooing. 3 people came up to speak. His son, which I had never met, carried baby. The theme was Laker, purple, and gold. My boy was a big Laker fan, I guess. I thought about standing up to say something, but not my place. All I know is he's a hardworking guy, honest. I know he lived in Pennsylvania, Pittsburgh, I think, and Idaho. He had 3 kids. There were 3 main women in his life. I think they were all there. There were 2 or 3 people in the audience that I knew besides his family. And pretty wild. There was a repast at his mother's house. So we went back there. The service went for 2 hours. Got out of there around 4. And I brought a box of cigars, some Jim Beam rye, and drove my truck back to the old neighborhood. As then, as now, I wasn't interested in going into the house, into Granny's house. I was literally next door. I see what they'd done to the house I grew up in. Put a jungle of plants out front. It's still my tree. It's thicker than it used to be. The berries still make stains on the sidewalk. The girl across the street inherited the house of her mother. She's starting to look like her mother. I told her so. She didn't want to hear that. So I poured her a cup. Talked for a minute. Her young daughter wanted to go outside the gate on the front porch. Mom wouldn't let her. Big Mike was out front, hosing down his Mercedes. They painted the driveway black. Replaced some of the grass with stones. There were a couple people I really wanted to see. I wanted to see the oldest. He was there, wearing coveralls with his name on it. Classic mechanic. He stayed busy. I wanted to know the kids around my age, how they'd done. And I wanted to update people on my family. I've got 2 dead brothers. 5 of us kids. We saw the second youngest son's son, second youngest brother's son, tall, looks just like him, Junior. I gave the deceased son a cigar, shook his hand, told him his dad was a good, hard-working, honest man. But he was more than that. That's the subtext of this whole thing, you see. I grew up in a neighborhood that went seriously downhill in the 80s. 4 of us who were there, me, E, other Mike, and the oldest brother, we kind of ran the neighborhood. And we were all into sports. E went eventually played pro football, got into real estate. He's a businessman now. Handsome guy. Recognized him pretty much right off in the church, but I didn't say anything. Never really thought about my neighborhood in the way that I'll probably think about it from now on, which is it's a place to escape from. And the overwhelming majority of us boys went either into crime or crime fighting. Not too many other ways out. Nobody there, although they're better off materially. The block is full of cars. Everybody's got a car. And sometimes 2 and 3. But it wasn't like that when I was growing up. But one of the kids is getting out now. And that's an expression that I don't know and I don't use, but that means getting out of jail. And a while back I wrote an ode to the knuckleheads, the guys that made us tough to deal with the craziness of the world. But what I sensed is that the craziness of the old neighborhood continues, and these people are working through it at a level that includes thieves and murderers, killers, just straight killers. And I remember them as kids, and I knew there was good kids and bad kids, knuckleheads, and people I didn't necessarily want to deal with, people I couldn't trust. And me and the baller, we're the closest to now. And he's inherited some interesting businesses, and we'll probably do something together later. But his youngest brother is 10 years old, 10 years younger than us. And that was a generation who just took the neighborhood down. They just didn't get the magic, I guess. They didn't understand the rest of the world. And their world wasn't fair, so they burned it down. I know one guy, three murderers in my neighborhood that I knew personally as kids. 3 killers. Just straight killers. Everybody else in the middle, working minimum wage and smoking weed, trying to get over. And time has not been kind. The neighborhood seems about the same size, but the people seem smaller. I was short because I had skipped grades, and I was always used to being in class with kids a year or 2 years older than me. I came back, I'm tall. healthy. People have a kind of thin look, like they haven't been eating right, and their skin is poor. Teeth are missing. I think about the poor mother. She's lost three children now out of 8. Her dad died, what, 74, 75, in the middle of high school. I remember people they don't remember, and they remember everybody. So me and the baller went through Leon, who went to USC, pledged Alpha, built on second story on top of his house, was into real estate, but was about as transparent as a dumbbell. I should say kettlebell for the trendy people, as a block of iron. He had that way about him. There were 2 guys that we knew, but we didn't know, were actually gay. And they were some of the first people who died of AIDS by 84. 85, I think. I don't know. One of them was my roommate freshman year in college. He was a good friend of mine, my best friend. Didn't know he was gay. A lot of people didn't until his funeral. Another funeral. When I went there, I was running out of fuel. I stopped at the Chevron station next to the ice house in the back alley there. And I had to pee. And I was calling my brother and my sister to tell them I was in the old neighborhood. And nobody picked up the phone, so I had it in my AirPods, and I went to find an alley to pee in. And that's when my sister picked up the phone. I didn't tell her about the context of the situation, but she didn't know that homeboy had died. Nobody knew. He's the same age as me. Few months older. He was born in February, I was born in June. The neighborhood is not bad looking. As a matter of fact, they're being gentrified. Houses now that my dad bought for $35,000 in 1966 are all going for $500,000 now. But you can see who has been there since day one and who just recently moved into a renovated place. And the renovated places are now going for $800,000 since they put in the train line and they renamed one street to Obama Boulevard. Train's still not going on the north-south route, but the east-west to Exposition Park has been there for about 4 years now. And the Culver City is creeping east. So they're white folks in the neighborhood, like they were in 1966. Well, a different breed, of course. This is the cappuccino drinking ones. There's a cafe on Jefferson Boulevard across the street from Janette's liquor store. We have bodegas, fish joints, a Burger King, West Angeles Church, Kokosai. Used to be a lot of automobile dealerships in the 70s, we had a Dodge dealer with the Daytona Charger up on a rotating platform. Mark C. Bloom was right across the street. It was Pep Boys just a block down. It's not a surprise that the boys were mechanics. The mechanics made it out. The deceased worked for the sheriff's department in West Hollywood. He was their mechanic. He worked on cop cars. And like I said, a lot of people either went to the military or law enforcement. It's almost as if they didn't have a choice. My brother also went into the LAPD. His best friend was shot in the head in high school. No reason. Drive by. When I talked to my sister about it, she said, we used to hide in the archway of the house that we used to rent across the street. And she and her best friend used to take down the license plates of the cars that came to the drug dealer. One of the drug dealers, his name was Killer. I didn't know. I know exactly how much I wanted out of my neighborhood and how much I didn't want. Same with the funeral. A lot of people I didn't need to be talking to, and I didn't want to, and I didn't. When I met homeboy about 5 years ago, the deceased, he had moved back from Idaho because his mother was ill, bedridden. And he told me, I hate Los Angeles. I hate all these fools. All they do is sit around, play their loud music in cars they can't really afford, smoke weed, do nothing all day. He said, I'll be honest with you, Mike. A bunch of fools in my family. But he was more harsh than I am. I've written that people may not know the dirt that's done if they're not into it. The baller explained that some of these fools, even though they killed with a knife in self-defense, well, that's a self-defense. You don't have to kill somebody. With a knife, you got to hit them a lot to kill somebody with a knife. And he wouldn't take the deal. Kids who would not take the plea bargain deal got 25 years. Another guy got life. Another guy who got 25 years is coming out now. It's not like Diana Ross, I'm coming out, because I'm getting out of jail. I suppose he'll come back to the neighborhood. I suppose he'll fit in to a certain extent. I got no need to be there. The best friend I had there, well, a lot of us left. People went to Rialto. My brother went to Pasadena. I would have gone to Pasadena, but I was done with school and moved to the South Bay. Oh. I would drive through there every couple months or so. There's some good people there still. Guy who coached football for my high school bought the house on the corner. The people who we rented from, their daughter inherited 3 houses on the block. I suppose she's doing okay. She didn't come to the funeral. It was a good neighborhood when I was a kid. And until my cohort left, it was a good neighborhood. And the people who are left are the last of it. And they'll be gentrified out in a short matter of time. It's what we wanted for the neighborhood. And of course, it would have been nice to own the property, which will have, multiplied 20 times in value since the 60s. It's California for you. But you would have had to gone through the killings. You would have had to gone through the drug wars. You would have had to gone through the stuff that made my childhood sweetheart lose her front teeth. Not worth it for me. The last of us moved out of there, probably around 97. The 80s had done their damage. Crack, cocaine wars, and murder. Could happen anywhere. It's happened so many places. And that's a culture. It's a culture because it's thick. You don't just walk out of that Mordor. These are people you know and love. People you hate and fear. People you can't get away with and you can't get away from without a studious effort. And me, I was out of there. So who was left? The leftovers. I never thought of my neighborhood as someplace I had to escape. I knew I was bored with it. And I knew I could walk through it. And it wasn't life or death, it was preference. But the choices became solid. And one side went down, and one side went up. There's always human agency. That's what people don't think about, which is why I'll always have a complex relationship to my neighborhood. People who think maybe I shouldn't have hugged them after all we've been through. I'm telling you, they broke into my house and fried my goldfish. The kids next door. And on the next door over, there's now an apartment building which used to be the home of Reverend Robinson, who never left the house without a suit and a hat on. He drove a white Lincoln Continental. And the people across the street, the Burtons, had a swimming pool and their daughter went to cotillion. It was a black neighborhood because it had been zoned to be that. The mortgage company, Lomas and Nettleton, would loan money to black families like mine, like my dad's family. And the last of the white folks took off. Around 1970, 69, who wouldn't stay around in a black neighborhood? The world was on fire. America was on fire. Our neighborhood didn't catch on fire. Slowly disintegrated. The death of men who played fair. That's what did it. Now there are people who remain. Old drug dealers. One of the kids from across the street remembers us, remembers the family, probably with the little guys. I mean, I was 10 years older than my sister, with 5 of us every 2 years, I guess. And he worked at Fedco, and I worked at Fedco, but our paths didn't cross. That was about all there was to say about it. I offered the men I knew a drink. I probably had more than all of them. I carried the bottle anyway. But that's what happened in my old neighborhood. And one of the closest people there is dead. I got no reasons to go back. My boy is the Ballers in Pasadena. My brother's family's in Pasadena. My late brother. Well, that's about all I have to say. In conclusion, this place used to be called West Adams. And there used to be streetwalkers on Adams Boulevard, just a mile west of the biggest churches in Los Angeles. There still are. Holman Methodist, still a big church over there. First AME, a little further to the east. Things change slowly. You gotta have a car, some passport, a way to get out and see the world, instead of living it through relationships that ossify over time. You can't get out of them. I'm a monkey in those trees. I can't stay put. But I'm leaving my trail of breadcrumbs for everybody to see. I'm sure I'll talk about it in the future. I always say I'm from a small town called Black. I wasn't supposed to be there in the first place. I got no reason to go back. I'm always moving forward. Brings a tear, because life isn't fair. That's one thing the minister got right. Life isn't fair. Couldn't sleep this morning. Well, that's all there is to say. The Stoic lesson, I don't know. We survive. One way or another. Better to have hopes